Welcome to another edition of Take 10 on Tuesdays with the Tennessee Tribune. Our guest today is Henri Giles, and her name is spelled Henri. And I'll have her tell you a little bit about how she came to be named Henri. But we're going to talk to her today about an award that she won, the Mid-South Emmy, for a documentary on sacred music. Mm-hmm. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, and welcome.
Thank you.
And tell us a little bit about Henri. It's an unusual name for a woman.
It is an unusual name, and usually when I'm returning phone calls, I think I catch a lot of people by surprise because they're expecting a man to be on the other end. But my full name is Henrietta. I'm named for my great-grandmother. And over the years, it has just been shortened in my professional life. So I just go by the name Henri now.
Okay. And Henri is an independent film producer, and the documentary that she won an Emmy for just a short while ago, about a month or so ago, is on sacred music, and you're based here in Nashville.
I am.
So tell us a little bit about why you decided to do that, and what it was like to win the Emmy.
Well, the topic, Black Sacred Music, came about actually through my relationship with the United Methodist Church. I, for several years, have worked on projects for several agencies within that denomination. And they contacted me about producing this film on Black sacred music. They wanted some sort of tangible documentation of the music, its legacy, its historic significance, to be available to their membership. They wanted it to be a resource for people to go to because, as you well know, a lot of Black churches do not sing Black sacred music, the hymns, the spirituals. So there's a generation of young Black Americans who know nothing about this music. And so it was a concern that this tradition could potentially be lost. And they wanted to do a documentary. It started out as sort of like a resource, a training type film, but then it just evolved into a documentary later on. But I was contracted by them to produce this. And we sat down, we talked about their goals and what they wanted to do, who they wanted to reach, and the type of music that they wanted represented in the film. So that's how it all came about.
And what are there any particular songs that seem to get lost in this whole thing? I'm a little more interested about what you learned in this process. What I learned, a lot of this music I was familiar with. Where I grew up in a small town in West Tennessee, in Stanton. Oh.
And so I grew up listening to and hearing this type of music. And what I was sort of surprised about was when we were in Maryland, we shot in 3 different locations: South Carolina, Georgia, and Maryland. And when we were in Maryland, I felt as if I had stepped back in time and I was in the South again. Because,
is that right?
Yes, the worship practices, it was just so similar, and you would never think you were in Maryland.
What, were you going to United Methodist churches? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we were. They had wanted to include United Methodist churches. We found some groups, and then there were some individuals that I found in the course of my research who were able to demonstrate certain types of music, like the call and response, and the hymns, and as we tend to call them, the Dr. Watts type songs.
Right.
So we had people in all of these locations singing this type of music. And it was just really a wonderful experience. I think one of the highlights of the of the whole production was when we were in South Carolina. I found this woman who at the time was 98.
Wow.
And I wanted to talk to her about the music and then, eventually ask her about it. Well, in the course of the interview, she just spontaneously started singing.
Oh, wow.
And
that's great.
It was it was a highlight. So while she was sitting there singing, I thought, oh my gosh, this has got to play, have a prominent place in the film. And it did. I actually start with her and I end the film with her.
Oh, wonderful.
But, she talked about growing up and she said, now you all have all of these instruments, guitars and drums, and we didn't have any of that. The only thing we had was a board floor.
Wow.
And we made our music.
I thought she was going to say piano, but
no.
Okay. All
she
right.
said the board floor, and we would just, pat our feet, and that was the music.
Yeah.
So.
So where can we see the film?
The film is on my website, and it's henrigilesmedia.com.
Okay.
And so you can take a look at it there.
Okay.
It's about 35 minutes long, not very long, but it's full of history and just really good comments from people around the country.
Great.
Who, have great things to say about Black sacred music, and then you can hear a lot of that music.
Okay. And there are other films on your website as well, as I recall.
There are.
So tell us a little bit about those. What else have you done?
A few years ago, I worked on a documentary for CMT, Country Music Television, and MTV, all owned by the same company. And it was on African Americans in country music.
Really?
And
okay.
I have no music background, so please don't ask me why am I doing all these films on Black sacred music, country music. It just happened. And but yes, I worked on that film, and that was a real eye opener, because as I was telling people, I'm producing this documentary on blacks in country music, and and they'd say, okay, what are you going to do, talk to Charlie Pride for an hour? and
that's generally who we think of as
right
being, and now Rucker,
Darius Rucker, right.
And beyond that, I don't know too many more names.
Yeah, well, there are several, and in fact, we trace the music back to Africa. Everything comes from Africa.
Wonderful.
So the banjo evolved from instruments used in Africa, and so that film again has a lot of history, a lot of information about African Americans' contributions to country music. I mean, and that's a genre that you don't typically associate blacks with, but we've definitely had a hand in its development. And even now, there are a lot of artists who are trying to still make their way into that, and it's difficult. Darius Rucker, of course, has had great success, but you have to remember he was a big star. Exactly, right. He was a big star beforehand. So I guess the industry didn't feel like they were taking as big of a risk on someone like him. He was already proven to be a successful entertainer. So. But he has done very well, and there are so many others out there who are.
All right, so if we go to your website, then we should look for Black sacred music, country music. Is there anything else?
There are just different projects that I've worked on. Some for the United Methodist Church, the Black College Fund. I've worked on several films for them, and just talking about the. HBCUs that the United Methodist Church supports, and so it's just a variety of clips on there, and on Vimeo is where all of my, well, most of my work, not all of it, but several other clips. Yeah, I don't have them all on my website, but they're on Vimeo. So if you went to Vimeo.com and searched my name, you would find those.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's go back a little bit further, and I know you were a field producer for the Oprah show at one point.
I was.
What was that like working with Oprah?
That was that was a great experience. It really was. I had the opportunity to work on several shows, and the one that really stands out is right after Hurricane Katrina.
Oh.
And
that was in 2000.
That was in 2005.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And
10 years ago. It's
I
hard
know
to believe.
it
Wow.
doesn't seem like it's been that long,
Yeah.
but they sent me to Mississippi because
Mm-hmm.
that's where a lot of the residents from New Orleans, one of the places where they were being sent, and it was one of the most fulfilling shoots, as well as one of the most heartbreaking shoots, because you were there with people who had lost everything, and some had lost family members and didn't know where they were.
Mm-hmm.
And so it and you know, I felt so helpless,
Right.
because I was there gathering their stories, but it wasn't anything I could do
To really help
to
them.
help them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say it was a good shoot, and then it was heartbreaking at the same time, because it was so important to get their stories out.
Mm-hmm.
But then you felt so helpless because
Right.
you couldn't do anything.
Okay. And let me ask you, for young people who may be viewing this, how would you suggest, if they're interested in producing films, documentaries, what's the best route to follow? Any advice?
The first thing I would say is to read, just to absorb as much as you can. There are so many stories, not just about African Americans, but just in general, in our world, and our multicultural world that we live in. So that's the first thing. Just read as much as you can, and just try to learn as much as you can about other people. And I think you'd be surprised at how lives intersect,
Mm-hmm.
and how much we have in common with each other. And the other thing is, you know, of course, if you're in school, internship.
Mm-hmm.
I always preach that to
Right.
to people who I meet. Try to work that out with the people in your department at school to try to secure an internship, or
Okay.
you know, or two if you can.
Mm-hmm.
But just try to get in there and get that hands-on experience.
Great. And what's next for Henri? What are you working on now? What else can we look for?
Well, right now I'm trying to get through grad school. I am juggling several things,
Mm-hmm.
but I should complete that this summer. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And I do have some other projects that I'm working on, in, you know, very much the infancy of them, and so I can't speak too much about them, but they involve you know, historical events surrounding African Americans, and I think people will be really surprised at them. I'm hopefully working on two of them, but you know, I will definitely fill you in later. But some historical events,
Mm-hmm.
mystery.
Oh, mystery is always good. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
All
and
right.
you know, in real life, you know,
Okay.
these are actual events. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, great. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We've been
I appreciate
talking with Henri Giles, an independent film producer here in Nashville. And you should be able to link to our site, tntribune.com, and we'll link to her site so you can see the films on gospel music, sacred music, and also on African Americans and country music. Thank you for joining us today.